that team's not obligated to call all 29 teams when they're trading Rafael Devers. They're going to talk to teams until they get a compelling offer, and then they're going to move. One thing that we would do in the front office is really at the beginning of the season, we would sit down with the lead trade negotiators. And I've been in front offices where that's just two people, the GM and the assistant GM. I've been in front offices like Minnesota where we kind of carved that up between four or five of us. And what we would do is we would identify kind of who has very productive relationships with specific teams. We wouldn't technically form a draft or anything of that nature, but we would kind of carve it out so that if there were four of us, each of us would be talking to, let's just say, 6 to 8 teams. And we were responsible for being the lead conversationalist with those teams. But it was meant to be throughout the season. We weren't just doing it at the trade deadline. So the first wave of trade conversations kind of starts taking place in spring training, where we're all paring down our rosters and we're trying to understand what our team's needs and surpluses going into the season. Then, a secondary of time would certainly be late June, early July, when you start getting your feet underneath you and understanding what are the team's objectives and goals heading into the trade deadline. But what I found to be most productive with the teams that were assigned to me is I would check in with them about every month and just find out because, you didn't want to be the team that when that curious trade that happens in May or June, and like we all sit back and say like, well, how the heck was that guy available? Who
Right.
knew? It's like, well, you only know if you're on the phone. That team's not obligated to call all 29 teams when they're trading Rafael Devers. They're going to talk to teams until they get a compelling offer, and then they're going to move. So if you're sitting on the sidelines and you're not in communication with them, you may just miss on that. I mean, I think the fans probably want to hear that we methodically call all 29 teams before we make a deal. In practice, the real risk of that is then it really gets out there that you're shopping a player. So you're
Mhm.
much more inclined to be very targeted in your pursuits. But then once somebody really trips the line for you, you're probably moving along. I always wanted to be the guy who was in the know of those deals, not the one sitting on the sideline reading the newspaper no different than anybody else and saying, oh my God, I had no idea that player was available.
Well, and we saw this in the NBA this past season with Luka Doncic, where he gets traded and they kept it such a secret to the extent that like even the best reporters and it seemed like other teams. And then in the weeks after that, there were some, anonymous stuff where it was like they didn't even reach out to us about him. We would have beaten that offer.